The Red Planet. Certainly it doesn't look like a hospitable place. Undoubtedly, the race to colonize Mars is on. There is the Dutch Mars One project, which is trying to raise $6 billion. Elon Musk's SpaceX wants to land humans on Mars by 2026. And there's NASA, who is dragging their feet but do have a lot to lose if Elon makes it to the Red Planet first. But what are the dangers to astronauts trying to land on or colonize Mars? How will Mars try to kill its first visitors? The journey. Before the astronauts even get to Mars, they must make a minimum of 6 months up to 2 years of a space voyage. During that extremely boring, claustrophobic trip, they'll deal with dangers such as asteroids, solar flares, solar radiation, and of course, human error. Try spending 6 months to 2 years inside a VW van and see if you don't start going nuts. Then there are the cosmic rays. Outside of the Earth's protective magnetosphere, astronauts are exposed to pervasive low-dose rate galactic cosmic rays, GCRs, and to intermittent solar particle events, or SPEs. To put it simply, leaving Earth is dangerous to your health. Our planet has a number of filters which make it possible for life to exist. Without those filters, astronauts must create artificial means of protecting themselves from cosmic rays. On Mars, this will always be the case. Sandstorms. Once they get to the Red Planet, the astronauts will face extreme weather conditions. Sandstorms the size of large hurricanes are common. In fact, it can happen that a Martian sandstorm can envelop the whole planet all at once. Let me repeat that. Mars has planet-wide sandstorms. The very soil is toxic, having high concentrations of chlorine, and the sand in the sandstorms is also toxic. As well, chlorine damages many materials after continuous exposure, serving as a kind of dissolvent. And at 1,500 kilometers per hour, a sandstorm would be like being inside a gigantic sand blaster. Only the most solid structures will remain. Since no such structures exist on Mars, any Mars colonizers would have to build them before a worldwide sandstorm blows them to dust. Distance from Earth. If astronauts travel to Mars, they'll go much farther into space than any human has gone before. The Moon is about 239,000 miles, or 380,000 kilometers from Earth, while Mars is 140 million miles, or 225 million kilometers away. This means that once they're on the Red Planet, astronauts will have no way to resupply their resources. It's not like you can find a 7-Eleven on Mars. So where to find food and supplies? The reality is that any Martian explorers must be ready to create their own supplies from whatever raw elements they find on the Red Planet. There is plenty of water on Mars, but most of it is frozen, and there isn't enough data to determine if the underground rivers that are supposed to exist might have clean water, or if the water underground is polluted by elements like heavy metals or other as yet unknown materials or substances. Isolation. We've already told you that the journey to Mars can take anywhere between 6 months to 2 years depending on the technology available. But what about staying on Mars? Martian colonists will have to face a brutal isolation and claustrophobia. Any Martian environment that is created specifically for the use of humans trying to colonize or terraform Mars will be exceedingly small at first. The sheer cost of transporting materials to the Red Planet will force any crew members to maximize the use of space for storage, leaving very little space for human activities. The members of a Martian landing crew will probably not number more than a dozen, more probably 4 to 6. They'll require to spend all their time together and somehow, miraculously, not kill each other. Do you have to share your room with brothers or sisters? Have you ever been inside a jail? Do you have roommates? Now imagine that you and your roommates must share the same room, that there's no outside to go to, and that you'll have to do this for over a year. The psychological pressure on such a team of adventurers will be enormous. There's a very real psychological danger called cabin fever, explored brilliantly by the Stanley Kubrick movie The Shining. Basically, if you're isolated from everybody, you can become an axe-wielding mass murderer. Low gravity. During the trip to Mars, astronauts will be exposed for zero gravity during a minimum of 6 months. There have not been any long-term studies on what this exposure will do to the human body, but according to the Human Research Program, changing from one gravitational field to another affects a person's hand-eye coordination, balance, movement, and sense of space. It also affects the muscles, bones, and heart. Muscles atrophy. Blood flow becomes confused. Then, when the astronauts arrive on Mars, they'll deal with a gravity field 3/8 as strong as Earth's. Again, it's pretty much impossible to determine the long-term effects of spending so much time in a world with such a different gravity field. But you have to remember that the human body is not built to work on 3/8 of our gravity. Illness and accidents. NASA scientists analyzed blood and urine samples from astronauts as well to monitor their health and stress levels. In space, stress hormones are elevated, according to the Human Research Program, and this can alter a person's immune system as well as make them more susceptible to allergies and other illnesses. Space also makes it easier for microorganisms which live on your body to transfer from person to person. So the ISS is swabbed to analyze the microbial population on board. A simple cold could wipe out an entire Martian colony because microorganisms thrive outside the planet. A simple cut or a burn can become a cesspit of infection because even in the most controlled environments, there's always a chance for microorganisms to flourish. A serious medical problem would have to be handled by the crew because the distance from Earth makes it impossible to get aid from a specialized doctor. Surgeries would have to be handled by the crew. Even a simple procedure like taking out a broken tooth could become a major problem for the crew. A cold planet. The Martian climate is much colder than Earth, with mean surface temperatures between 186 and 268 K, that's minus 87 and minus 5 degrees Celsius, or minus 125 and 23 degrees Fahrenheit, depending on the season and latitude. The lowest temperature ever recorded on Earth was 184 K, that's minus 89.2 degrees Celsius, or minus 128.6 degrees Fahrenheit. And that was in Antarctica. It's always sunny on Mars since there's no cloud cover, but the extreme cold would affect the equipment in the long term. The unknown. We've discussed the known problems of landing on Mars. Certainly, the idea of facing planet-wide chlorine-rich sandstorms doesn't sound like a walk in the park. But what we can't really predict is what we don't know about the red planet, which, in practice, is much more than what we do know. Let's first consider that in 2012, it was reported that some lichen and cyanobacteria survived and showed remarkable adaptation capacity for photosynthesis after 34 days in a simulated Martian condition like on Mars. The Mars Simulation Laboratory maintained by the German Aerospace Center took care of this. So, although we don't really have any evidence of little green men building cities somewhere on Mars, we can't rule out that a form of life might exist in the unexplored regions of the planet, or perhaps even underground. This form of life might or might not be friendly to mankind. It might be an unstoppable virus that turns astronauts into disco-dancing zombies. Or it might be a chlorine-based form of life which feeds on human psychic energy. The possibility for a Lovecraft-like cosmic horror of unimaginable proportions is enormous once you leave the safety of Earth. Scientists don't really know all the varieties of life forms which exist on our own planet. What makes us think there's no life on Mars already? The unknown represents all of our collective fears of whatever is a mystery to us. Mars is a great mystery, and to think we know everything there is to know about it is not only foolish, it might be deadly. All the same, the great adventure to conquer the red planet will go on, and hopefully in our generation, and we'll manage to get human beings to land on Mars and plant their feet on that chlorine-rich soil. There is something majestic and wonderful about allowing ourselves to dream of Martian colonies, and such dreams are what gives life and beauty to our species. Perhaps some of our most pertinent questions will be answered once we reach the red planet. Perhaps the cooperation needed to land there will give us hope for uniting the world behind this one great dream. Perhaps we'll discover Elon Musk was a Martian all along and he just wanted to get back home.